Casey here with Boom Island, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different we haven't really done before. This will be a pretty long form video, mostly uncut, hopefully all uncut. You get just one long take, and we're going to be discussing today 2025, just a year in review, discussing what happened, what went well, what didn't go well, and basically treating this as you like any public company would. Like a quarterly business review, financial review, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to get into a lot of details that you normally don't see, especially in the brewing industry, and go into a deep dive of the back end and show you a lot of the stuff that I see, a lot of our metrics, and then also kind of what we're planning to do for the next year. So before we get into that, for those that don't know all that much about us, well, I'll give a short background about Boom Island itself. This might be old news for a lot of you, but some people might be interested in this. So we'll start with that. And yeah, like I said, then we'll get into key moments, financials, and then next year focuses. So for the company background, the brewery was founded about 15 years ago, 14 and a half-ish now, founded in 2011 in northeast Minneapolis. Basically right across the river from Boom Island Park. At the time, the brewery was focused exclusively on Belgian beers. That was kind of its claim to fame. Spent, 7-8 years at that location, kind of outgrew it a little bit, and the founder at the time was looking to expand to a new location. And that's when the second ownership group was added, and the brewery made its move to Minnetonka in 2019. So that group of three took over about 6 years ago now, almost 7, and ran the brewery for a while. A lot of changes were implemented, including a switch away from Belgian beers as the main focus. And the menu of beers widened a lot at that time. A new brewer was brought on. A lot of things really started to change. And then about 2.5 years ago was when I took over, September of 2023. And since then, we've been trying to make some more changes, hopefully things that, you've noticed in the last couple of years. Mostly good, I would hope, but you never know. Some people, you're always going to have people that don't like 100% of what you do. So, and yeah, like I said before, we've been moving away from the Belgian background a little bit. We still have some mainstays up on the menu that are kind of flagship beers that are an homage to our past, and will just remain up there as far as I can see anyway, because they're great beers and people love them. So the brewing industry at large is kind of taking a step back to see, we've been a brewery in Minnesota for 15 years, one of the older ones, especially in craft brewing. But what does the bigger picture look like for the industry? And honestly, there's been a lot of headwinds overall, and I'm sure this isn't news to anybody. There's been a lot of challenges, and more breweries are closing than are opening right now. So just some general stats about that. Last year, or this year, maybe this was last year, but there were 434 closures and 268 openings. This is national data from the Brewers Association. And overall craft volume sales was down about 5%. Not the right direction that you want to be going for a business, or for an industry, but that's the reality of what it is. Some people just aren't drinking as much anymore. Some people aren't going out as much anymore. And, obviously everyone kind of points to COVID, but that really was a wrench into everything as an industry. I think, over time we'll kind of bounce back from that and go back towards the mean, and people will go, back out again, because, beer really is a very old industry in general. Craft brewing is fairly new and a new take on it, but beer and socializing in that third place is nothing new to humanity. So I think we'll see a little bit of improvement there over the next couple of years. Distribution has been a little bit weird in Minnesota, especially with THC beverages coming onto the scene. A lot of liquor store shelf space the craft beer section was being reduced by 25-50%. huge reductions to make room for THC sales, which is great for some of the larger breweries that are focusing on that. But for a lot of us, especially smaller breweries, that's a big negative, and was one of the driving factors that caused us to leave distribution a year ago. Was just the lowering of shelf space, and we were losing quite a bit of money trying to, get outside sales of our product. A lot of breweries are also switching their models. It's very rare now to kind of just be a craft brewery tap room. A lot of places are now moving to more of a brew pub model where they're adding restaurants and food and that kind of stuff. And then other breweries, especially in this area, are switching to more of a contract manufacturing model where they're focusing mostly on the distribution portion of it, especially those that decided to jump into the THC sales right away. So they converted some of their tanks, they dedicated a lot of their brewing time to that specifically. And for some of them, it's really working out. But there's also a lot of uncertainty with that part of the industry, with the recent government shutdown news that also included a ban on THC federally for these lower potency products, which was a loophole before that allowed them to gain the market. So a lot of uncertainty there, a lot of things in the larger landscape of brewing that are kind of changing, and people's tastes and everything change all the time too. So we're trying to adapt to that and stay in business. So looking back at 2025, kind of the key moments that we had, focusing mostly on just big misses and big wins. These are kind of a caveat to this, is these are things that I just thought of when thinking about it for an hour or two. There may be others. There may be things that we missed that were impactful to you. And if there is, or big wins too that, I don't talk about that you thought were important, feel free to leave a comment to us, reach out to us, let us know what you're thinking. We always appreciate feedback. It helps us become better in the space and improve as a company. So, some misses, in my opinion, that we had in 2025. We've been trying comedy shows here in our facility for 2 years now. And we continued that a little bit in 2025 just to see if it would kind of pick up again. And that part of it has been a struggle and has not been successful. I think the shows have been great, but people just don't seem to be interested in them as much as we thought they would be. So, unfortunate there. We spent quite a bit of time and investment to try and get those to work, and they unfortunately didn't. Similarly, Dad Day, which we had this last year, did not really fit up or match up to the vision that I had for that. We didn't put enough prep work into that day, I think. So might be an area of improvement for the next year. There were a few beer sales this year that did not do very well. We had a smoked wheat beer, Ducks on the Pond, our Saison, did not sell very well. We also had some event beers that weren't fantastic. This is one of those misses that I'm okay with. You got to try new stuff. You got to try and throw stuff out there, and sometimes they just don't work, and that's just the nature of the business. Especially with event beers, these are one-off kind of experiments, if you will, and some of them aren't going to be great. It's just is what it is. So, like I said, I'm okay with this. I would rather us try new stuff and have stuff fail every now and then, but at least we're trying new stuff. The St. Paul Saints this year. So this year was the first year we reached out, or they reached out to us, and we got onto their craft beer corner and had a couple beers on tap throughout the entire season. I think this was a great opportunity, but unfortunately sales did not go very well for us out there. So we ended up, I think, maybe breaking even or losing a little bit of money on that. It cost us $4,000 to just get on tap. So a lot of beer sales required to make up that investment, and we didn't quite get there. So was a good opportunity, was a good chance to take, and it just didn't end up panning out for us. Silent Disco, we've had a couple of these here not very frequently, but this last one that we had, again, I think the actual event itself was great, but the number of attendees did not pan out the way that we would have wanted it to. And that probably came down to just awareness and not enough time for it, and maybe the wrong messaging with it that we just missed on that one. And then memberships and special releases. I think our membership program is fantastic overall. But one of the benefits on there that, you know, members get early access to beers before they come on tap, we haven't really focused on that as much as I intended to. We tend to, we have, like I said, yeah, we just haven't focused on it. And how to word this? This is great. You know, it's live because we're not stumbling over my words. But yeah, special releases, that's one of those benefits that I would love to get people to, you know, their value out of that more than they did this year. It's a hard balance to play with because you want to give a benefit to those members, but you also don't want to alienate the general population too, or just the customer base. So I've been struggling with that a little bit on when do we do it, when do we not do it, and sometimes we just get so caught up in, you know, daily business activities that we forget to add that value to the customers that we say we were going to. So to me, I think that that's a little bit of a miss that we've had this year. So on a more positive note, some wins from this year, and I think there were some pretty big ones, which is great. Our beer, you know, got a lot of accolades this year, and I think that this is awesome. Like, we're finally being recognized for one of the things that I believe is our strong suits. I think we have fantastic beer, and we just need to tell people about it, and people just need to know about it. So this year we were named Minnesota's best beer with our pumpkin pie. We were just recently, about a week ago, named 2025's best sip with our Dark Horse, our porter. And then we also were named, I think, the 19th best brewery in Minnesota by another news article not too long ago. So people are noticing us, which is great, and we just need more people to know, because I think what we're doing here in the tap room now is great. But word just needs to spread, and more people need to know about it. Beers that went well this year as opposed to the ones that didn't sell well. So this year, pumpkin pie sold very well. We actually made an extra batch of that beyond what we were planning. I think a lot of that driven by receiving the Minnesota's best beer for that. People were coming to check it out. Our Oktoberfest sold very quickly as well. Great beer, one of my favorites. Our IPAs and our light drinking lagers continue to sell very well. Throughout the entire year, our number one seller was our Que Pasa, our light Mexican lager. Delicious. Sharpshooter was a new beer this year that we tried out, which was a West Coast Pilsner. Fantastic beer. People really loved it. And then Push Up. Again, this has been a recurring seasonal beer that people continue to like. Was one of the beers that we brought to the St. Paul Saints, and we also had to make an extra batch of it this year too to keep up with demand. We've had some great large special events this year, especially some new ones. Our Nights and Pints this spring was a fantastic hit. If you weren't there, don't know about it, we had some like a mini Renaissance fair out in our parking lot, including a jousting and sparring club with people in full armor sets that were hitting each other in a ring outside. It was great. We had a mini forge out over here too, and a bunch of vendors and special beers for that event. It was a great time. Our block party this year, we kind of reimagined it a little bit. Our block party anniversary party celebrating 14 years. That was also fantastic. We had a drink or treat tasting event with 5 other local breweries in the area, similar to kind of the big tasting events that you see throughout the state. We held our own little one here, much cheaper in price, but the same kind of deal. And that was a huge hit as well. So we're planning to do basically all of these, and then might add, a couple more this next year. We'll see. We're still in the planning stage for a lot of that stuff. New recurring events that we added in 2025. Karaoke, pub song social. We added initials game, late last year, so I'll count it for this year. Things like that we're adding routinely that, happen on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, stuff like that. It's just really fun to participate in. I think that's been a huge win. There's been some, we're continuing to try and experiment with things that people enjoy, coming to the brewery to see and do and experience and all that stuff. So we've been hitting on more than we've been missing on with that type of thing, which is great. Our private event groups, like reserving space in the tap room for anniversaries, birthdays, baby showers, all that stuff has grown this year, which is great, and has been a focus for us. So to see the growth follow the focus that we put into it has been great. Growing youth and charity partnerships. So this year we've done a lot of work, especially with local schools for music groups, sports programs, all that kind of stuff, where they'll come in and have a night dedicated just for them, and giving back to the community, and those have been phenomenal, and we're looking forward to doing that a lot more in the future too. And then improve financial trends. So we'll see this once we get into the actual financial details, and I think that's my next slide. So that's a good segue into it, but we'll see it when we get there. But so for Taproom revenue, we're going to take a look at a few high level graphs here that show the trends between 2024 and 2025, and then we'll get into some actual just overall values after that. So you can see here on our Taproom revenue trend, the two bars that are stacked here, the light red and the dark red. The dark red is 2025. I just took the second half of this graph and superimposed it over the first half, so you could kind of see what the trend was. And overall, there were many months, I think 10 out of 12, where we had increased revenue over last year, which is phenomenal, including some huge wins here in October and November, where we were, I believe it was 30% revenue difference year over year. Huge increase, kind of unheard of for the brewing industry, really, especially when the general, tap room sales and all that stuff throughout Minnesota and the nation are down 5%. For us to go up 30% is pretty great. And we'll get a composite value here in a little bit too. Taproom costs. So overall, the last 2 years, you can kind of see a trend line going down for our COGS. So this bottom line is our COGS value month over month, and the top line is total expenses. So COGS is anything that goes into making the beer, ingredients, all that kind of stuff. We actually saw a decrease in that. Overall expenses has been very flat throughout the last 2 years, right at about $60,000 a month. Marketing, this has been a focus for us this last year, 2025. Prior to that, we weren't really doing any active marketing. We weren't focusing on it. So you can see a sharp uptick starting in about January, February of this year, where we're increasing significantly and maybe increased a bit too much. And then we started to pull it back a little bit to something a bit more manageable. But yeah, this has been a focus for us because, like I said, we just need to get our name out there more and let more people know about us. I think, one kind of mindset that I've been living with or trying to learn this last year is that nobody knows who you are. I've been hearing the last 2 years from people that even live locally that, we never knew you were here. In fact, I heard it about a week ago when we were doing a hockey group party. They said, well, a lot of the parents of these kids didn't even know that you were here. And that was, people that were 5 miles away. So, this is kind of the biggest struggle I think that we're facing in the next year or two, is just getting more people to know about us and get the word out there that we exist. Even though we've been here a while, it's still operate under the assumption that nobody knows that we're here. So, and then bottom line, net income here over the last couple of years, overall, not great for a lot of it. We've been below break even for the majority of months. However, I think the thing to look at here is that the trend is going upwards, going in the right direction. Some of this December number at the end, take with a grain of salt that we haven't closed out the books on all that yet. But we're going the right direction. I think that's good news. And in the next year or two, really looking to break out into profitability. So looking at an overall summary, very high level of, major categories, the summation between 2025, which is that current column, and 2024, we had about a 12% increase in taproom sales year over year between 24 and 25. Like I mentioned before, we had a couple months that were much larger than that. But 12% growth is, for our industry, is pretty good. Wholesale was a huge step down. So we were still doing some passive wholesaling, but we, eliminated distribution entirely, which is why the income from that is much lower this last year. Tickets, rentals, and memberships and all that kind of stuff. This is any other income source that's not beer related. Huge increase in that, 170%, which is phenomenal. We've been focusing a lot more on beer memberships and on private events, like I mentioned, and this illustrates really where that growth has gone. Also new this year, we started pull tabs and e-tabs. Our license was active January 1, so as of today, it's been a year of gambling or pull tabs, and very minor income from this for us. Looking to see that grow this next year. I think a lot of people just don't realize that it's here yet. And so, especially when we first got it, it was very slow coming off of it. People didn't know it was here. And the winter is a big time for people to be playing pull tabs. It's an extra thing to do. So we'll see if that changes this next year. So total income, this is all of those top line income sources minus sales tax, minus tips to bartenders, because a lot of that is included in some of the, especially the taproom sales. So minus all that, we were basically flat. Even with the huge reduction in wholesale and the gain, that reduction in the gain from the room rentals and all that kind of stuff kind of offset each other a little bit. Total COGS is down 15% year over year, like we saw in the graph earlier. Pretty big reduction, which is great. 15% savings year over year is phenomenal. Gross profit was up about 5%, so that's your total income minus your COGS. Total expenses, we did increase a little bit. I mentioned we were basically flat, but it was up about 7%. So the offset of the COGS and the expenses kind of cancel each other out a little bit. And then net income year over year, huge difference between 24 and 25. A loss of $130,000 in 24, and then this year a loss of $68,000. So like I said, trending in the right direction, but would love to see those into the black, of course. When I was looking back through some of our metrics, this was an interesting bit of it that kind of came up to me, was if we break all of our taproom sales out by category, our tap beers obviously contribute the most to our revenue, 75%, almost 76%. Food and snacks, almost 11% in our total sales, which is great. That was a little bit more than I was probably expecting. Crowler sales, this was significantly more than I was expecting it to be. 6.1% of our total sales are people grabbing something from our cooler and walking out the door. Would love to see that continue to go up, but still that's a significant number. Our non-alcoholic products that we have, so this is all of our sodas, our NA beers that we have on site, our sparkling water, all that kind of stuff, 3% of our overall revenue. THC sales, 1.7%. This isn't surprising to me, but to some people it may be surprising that, they hear a ton of stuff about THC and think that it's this huge driver. But for us, that's not really true, and which is why we have chosen to not spend a significant investing into THC sales and THC products or anything like that, because the percentage of revenue is so small. I think it's important to have as part of an offering that's there for people that want that, but it's not going to be a main focus for us because of this reason. Apparel and merch could together combine. You could combine these. Merch is really kind of like stickers and non-apparel merch. then yeah, the two combined almost 2%, 1.6%. So again, not a huge portion of our revenue, which is probably why you don't see a whole bunch of new stuff all the time that you might see at other places. So yeah. Okay. So that kind of brings us into, well, what are we doing this next year? A lot of this is to those that, that I've talked to before, or, some employees here shouldn't be really surprises. These are a lot of things that I think we're doing well. So we're going to continue to focus on them. And then continue to grow our private events. I don't think it's really a secret, but if you can get if you make a sale with one person, that's like having a birthday party or something, that one person represents 20, 30, 40 people. So that's a huge return on, if you can spend some advertising dollars to get in front of eyeballs that want to use a private space. It's a huge return on investment versus advertising kind of a general event, though it may have a larger amount of people. The return on how much you put towards that is not as drastic. So we're going to continue focusing on that, both B2B and B2C. We have a lot of like happy hours from companies that do come through, but I'd like to see some more of that this next year. Great beers, obviously one of our, keystones for what makes us great. I think we have great beers, great people, great atmosphere. And that's, I think I listed all that on here, that we're really going to continue to just focus on that and keep it a focus and keep doing what we do well. Keep doing well. Did I say that right? Keep doing well what we do well already. Tongue twister. And then, for special events and recurring events, like I mentioned, I think we had some huge wins with that this last year, and we're going to continue to do that, especially since those days, from a financial standpoint, represent a huge boost in revenue for a single day. They're great. If we could do them more, we would, but understanding that there's fatigue with that too. Some people don't want, a lot of people don't want to have a huge event, 1 week to the next week at the same place. You'd get sick of it. You'd say, well, there's, they don't seem as special. Our staffing, I think the staff that we have are really second to none in the state, and a lot of people comment on that. It's going to continue to be a focus for us. I think we do it well, and we're going to continue to do it well, and just focus on our people. And then marketing, like I'd shown a couple slides ago before about overall marketing costs. We're going to continue to work through that and figure out the best way to get in front of people. Like I said, we just need more people to know who we are and share what's happening. So to kind of shed a little bit more light just on private events themselves, like I mentioned, here's a graph about what we've trended for booked parties over the last couple of years. Ignore this last data point here at the end for January of 2026. We usually, in the month itself, will gain about 10 to 15 more. So this data point should be up in the mid 20s or so by end of month. But a market increase here, with the exception of July of 2025, which was kind of an outlier. A lot of people going to their cabins or celebrating July 4th. But overall, an increasing upwards trend, starting to break into the 30s late this year, which is great. Would love to see that, steady out in the 30s every month. Because like I said, every one of these parties represents really 30 plus people that are visiting the tap room and celebrating with us. So really, that leads me to final comments and just final thoughts overall. Hopefully this was an interesting format and a bunch of interesting information for some of you. A lot of people probably just clicked off right away and were not interested, but for those of you that made it all the way here, thank you for watching. Thank you for drinking local, for choosing us, and continuing to be, what's the right way to say it? Advocates for us. out in the community and, you know, spreading good word and all that kind of stuff. It really means a lot and makes a huge impact. And a lot of this last year, I think, was because of that. So overall, a positive trend of a year. Like I said, we still have things to work on, still probably some business constraints to get rid of, to move into profitability and become, you know, that kind of business. So if you guys have any questions, feedback, any type of comments or anything, feel free to leave them in this video, or you can reach out to us at info@boomislandbrewing.com, or, you know, talk to staff that's here. We're more than willing to, you know, bring that up, or they'll probably let me know if I'm around. Yeah, and if you like this format, comment, let us know. It's something we're trying out. It might not work, but if it's interesting to you, we might do more stuff like this, maybe quarterly reviews. There's some other things that we have planned, especially early for this year, to try out more format like this. So let us know what you think, and thanks again for visiting. Again, I'm Casey with Boom Island Brewing, and thanks for buying our beer.